From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
So I'd like to begin with a little story about a 5-year-old, little Susie. You've heard little Susie jokes, haven't you? Or stories? So little 5-year-old Susie was complaining to her mother, "I've got a stomach ache." And her mother said to her, "Well, that's because your stomach is empty, and you'd feel a lot better if you had something in it." So, okay, that afternoon, their minister happened to drop by for a visit, and in conversation remarked that he had been suffering from a headache all day, and Susie perked up and said, "Well, that's because it's empty, and you'd feel a lot better if something were in it." Children say the darndest things at the darndest time. I'm going to call on Susie again from time to time to share with you. Today I want to talk about really expanding our horizons. That's really what we're about in Unity, and about breaking new ground. I think life is really about that. We're always being pulled and stretched to kind of break new ground and expand our horizons. So really whatever is happening and going on in the world, and whatever is happening and going on in your own personal world, in a way, in the way that it is bringing forth new challenges, really, is simply the opening to discovering, I believe, new horizons for a person, and the opportunity to break new ground, and for changes to happen and to move towards something greater. Whatever the era of time that a person lives in, doesn't matter whether it's the 1800s, 1900s, 2000, whatever century it might be, we are all pilgrims, we are all pioneers, and we are all travelers, really, who are challenged to change, and we're challenged to adapt and to create the next dimension of good as co-creators of God, because we are all co-creators of God, with God. And it's important to realize that. We did not come into a world that was static. We did not come in to keep the world static. The world is dynamic, shifting, changing, morphing. And so are we. We are dynamic, creative beings. And life energy is always moving through and passing through us every moment of every day as thinking beings. We either use it constructively or destructively, depending upon where our awareness is, where our consciousness is in life. And that's the continual journey, is to wake up and to be the vessel through which those energies are flowing through us in the most constructive and positive way. And so the first mention of God, even in the Bible, is as creator. So the first 5 words of the Bible is, "In the beginning God created." In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. A few verses later, it states that God said, "Let us make man in our image." And so it's important to realize that our essential nature is to be creative. Okay, God is the creator, and we are made in the image of creating. We're always going to be creating. And so the world we are a part of, we are contributing to the creation of. The experiences that we have in our life on a regular basis, individually, we are creating. So everything is being created individually, collectively. Dynamic is going on at all times. In the I Ching, it states, "I am a child of God. I come from the womb of creation." Those of you who study the Course in Miracles, it states, "Because of your likeness to your Creator, you are creative." And so life will always be offering us the opportunity to experience new horizons, really, to break new ground, if you will, and break new ground within ourselves. You know, there will always be new circumstances and situations presenting themselves, which will give us the opportunity to think bigger, to think deeper, to love bigger and love deeper, to grow bigger and deeper, because in some way that is what we all signed on for when we came into this world and into this life. It's not to remain static in where we are. We're meant to be growing and expanding. Really consider the process of the creation of your birth itself. You know, we were housed within our mother's womb, and cells were multiplying, dividing rapidly, and all the while expanding until we no longer could be contained within that womb, and we were thrust out of that womb I like to say we were evicted. And that's just the way it is. And so we were thrown into a whole new expanse where there are new horizons, and it forces us to break new ground and experience new things and have new possibilities and dimensions of life and living be open to us. In Unity, we talk about again and again the importance and the power of thought and how creative that power of thought is. And so one single new thought, actually the organization of many Unity churches and centers for spiritual living and what have you, they're called, lumped together under an umbrella called New Thought. And it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a new thought under the sun. It's just bringing forth into your consciousness a new thought, a higher thought, and a difference that it can make. And so one new expansive thought can thrust a person forward in their life. And they let go of one and grab another. So we want to let go of the thought that might be limiting us, that's holding us back and holding us down. Much of life is a process of releasing and letting go, oftentimes unlearning, if you will. And a belief is simply loyalty to a particular thought, where you think the thought over and over and over again, and then you become that. And it's hard to get out of that rut. And so we can have loyalty to a negative thought, which carries with it pain and limitation. Or we can establish loyalty to a thought that is aligned with the truth of God. That's why Jesus said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free." We all want to be set free. Okay, and the way to be set free is to really release some of the grip and the hold that the mind has on certain ideas that do not serve us, have never served us. And so that's part of the journey. And so breaking new ground can often be simply breaking through old layers of thought and belief that have been limiting us, that have been keeping us away from and apart from what God has intended us to be or holds us to be in really the mind of God. And so Jesus said, of course, again and again in different ways, all things are possible. All things are possible to him who believes. With God, nothing is impossible. That is the teaching. And so over and over again, each and every one of us really will be given the opportunity to learn more about ourselves, learn more about the truth of ourselves, learn more about the true nature of the divine that seeks to live, move, and have its being within us, and be given freedom of expression through us. And we are given that opportunity to learn about ourselves through the many different challenges and situations that we encounter in life. And it's in those things that sometimes, we can move into, or they can cause us to doubt ourselves. They can cause us to go into fear, various levels of discomfort, separation, and then those stresses around these things cause us to show up in a way that is really separate from the truth of who we are. And it diminishes the reality of who we are when we get into fear and stress. We just separate on out from who we are. We can become short and irritable. We can be tense and insensitive. Those things happen. And later we can hopefully be sorry. But it's in the moment when fear grips us and has hold of us. And what are those fears that we need to release and let go that stymie us and keep us from really being the truth of who we are? Many, in the effort to avoid the challenges of change, attempt to keep things the same. And they fight to keep things the same. And they have stress around trying to keep things the same and static. And life simply is not that. And we need to establish new horizons. We need to be thinking in terms of breaking new ground and where it is that the Spirit is leading and guiding us in that regard. There was a wonderful speaker, delightful man. His name was Jack Holland, and he was a speaker here a number of times in the 60s and 70s. And he was an author and New Thought speaker. And one of the sayings that he liked to share, he's no longer with us, bless his soul, but one of the things I remember he said that stuck with me, he said, "Fixed externals can never fix internals." You see what I'm saying? We have stuff going on inside of us that we want to avoid, the fears and so forth, and so sometimes people will try and fix and keep the same, the externals in their life, so they won't feel the discomforts. But the discomforts are the things they actually have to work through. And so what he's saying is that fixed externals can never fix internals, all right? It's not the way of life. Life is about stretching in some ways beyond the familiar and beyond the current horizon. It might be going back to school, it might be starting a new business, it might be going to a new job, it might be moving to a new location, it might be getting married, it might be having a baby, it might be buying a new home, it might be facing some challenge or set of circumstances that have popped up unexpectedly. Webster's dictionary speaks of the word horizon as being, quote, the apparent junction of earth and sky. The apparent junction of earth and sky. Horizon. That makes sense, doesn't it? But it also says that horizon is also, quote, a range of perception or experience. Interesting, isn't it? Life is always about motion, and so it is about expanding our range of one's perception and experience. That range should be always broadening, always expanding. We live in an expansive universe. We are expansive beings. We have an expansive God. Heaven actually is rooted in the word expanse. Now, when it comes to accomplishing something, when it comes to stretching or breaking new ground, there are basically at least three things that I feel are important. One has to do with one's vision, having a vision. What is your vision for the goal? What is your vision of where you want to get to? Whatever you're facing, whatever you're dealing with, what does it look like at the end product? And to begin to actually formulate that, whatever the adventure, whatever the challenge, whatever the new creation, you project yourself forward toward a positive picture. And fear will paint a negative picture of what is in front of you and keep you in its grip, or faith is what paints brightness around the future and is able to take you with clarity and intent to where you're wanting to go. So number one is vision. Number two is the call. The call is, what part am I allowing God to play in this? Have I called on that presence and power? Am I drawing upon it? Am I accessing it? Am I seeking to be guided and to follow that God's guidance? Am I entering into this in partnership with the divine? So that's the call that is to happen. And so then after having a vision, having to make the call, being guided, the next is now to take action on what you've been guided. And number three is what I refer to as the leap of faith. Now you have to leap into action. Okay, you've created a vision where you want to go. You've asked and invited the guidance. You've gotten some degree of guidance. Now you need to leap forward in faith. You have to take the next right step for you in your life in terms of what is before you. And you have to trust, obviously. Anytime you're leaping forward into new ground, there's an element of trust and having faith. So it's very important that you hook up in the call, that you invite the divine to be partnering with you as you go forward. God has given us the capacity to do great things in this life. We can do them individually, and we can also do them collectively as we gather our energies together to do great things creatively. This whole sanctuary that you're all sitting in is the result of thousands of people that collectively held the vision, gave to it, made it a reality. So collectively you can do things like that. We can do great things in the world when people hold to an intent and a vision of something wonderful. We can do the great things individually too. But really, the truth is, very few things are done individually in this world. There are so many people that surround us that are a part of any good thing that happens. You can't claim it as your own. Rarely, if ever, does that happen. And so it's important to know that. But we have to be able to really make a leap and leap into new territory and break new ground. I like to refer to the African impala. I was mentioning that we're going to be going to South Africa, and so we're meeting up with some African impala. But the interesting thing about the African impala is that it has a tremendous gift in leaping ability, and that it can jump to a height of over 10 feet, has that capability. It can jump across a distance of more than 30 feet. All right? Yet those magnificent creatures can be kept in the enclosure of any zoo with a 3-foot wall. And these animals essentially have a weakness They have a wonderful gift, but they have a weakness. And the weakness is in their unwillingness to jump if they cannot see where their feet land. And so they don't have the courage to trust, to make the leap that would expand their reach into the world. And so they are fenced in. They're walled off from a sense of freedom when they don't have to be. And so when looking for a miracle in your life and looking to demonstrate a miracle, I always like to say, expect the impossible, feel the intangible, and see into the invisible. Okay? Expect the impossible, feel the intangible, and see into the invisible. There is an invisible power that is always there. And we are always continuing to be in the process of learning how best to access it, how to know we're in it and with it. And that's a process. I recall, I love the story that my friend Mary Morrissey, who's a speaker who's been here many times and will be coming again in June. She tells about a time when her and her family, a large group of her family, were in Cabo San Lucas, and they were on kind of a vacation together. And the kids all wanted, her kids, which are, grown-up adults at this point, they wanted to rent four-wheelers and race through the sand dunes there in Cabo. And Mary wasn't much into that. And she kind of resisted because she wasn't into shifting gears and all of that. She had trouble doing that. But they said, you'll learn, it's easy, come on. So she climbed aboard with them and got into her four-wheeler, and she learned to shift gears a bit. And she was the last one in a group of 8 four-wheelers. And they kept turning back at her, and like her oldest son would say, hurry up, Mom, step on the gas. And she said that all the others seemed to glide along, and she was lurching with her thing. And when they got to the sand dunes, she said she was already exhausted. She was ready to quit, and she said, go on without me. But they came back with a barrage of her own teachings. Don't let fear run your life, Mom. Just take a baby step. Have faith, come on. So she relented and kept going. And so she said that it was great, easy going downhill on these sand dunes, but everyone else seemed to rise up these sand dunes with ease, but she kind of dug in and would just kind of get bogged down in spinning her wheels or whatever. She said the engine roared, but it didn't move forward. And so they were all yelling to her, change gears, shift gears. She shifted gears, that didn't work. Finally, her one son-in-law, whose name is Jorge, he got off of his four-wheeler, came over beside her where she was spewing in the sand, and leaned over and whispered in her ear so as not to embarrass her in front of everyone. He said, Mama, you have power you not using. Take your foot off the brake. She had been flooring it, and the engine was roaring. At the same time, she had her brake, pushed down. So all of us really could say to ourselves, at least one time or another in life, you've got the power, you're not using it. You take your foot off the brake. And we have the foot on the brake, at times simply when we're in fear, when we're in doubt, when we're in our uncertainties about things. And some ways we keep the foot on the brake and we don't allow the power to really move us forward. So we're all guilty of that at times. But God cannot help us do what is possible if we don't create the opening and keep ourselves believing that there is a way and persist. Perseverance is very important. And so again, back to the idea, if I'm looking for a miracle, I have to expect the impossible. I have to feel the intangible. I have to see into the invisible. I have to be able to see beyond what is. There's a story that I came across actually in the 70s. It probably was around my first year in ministry. I used to get Success magazine. I think it was brought out by W. Clement Stone. And it was an article by Earl Nightingale back in the 70s in one of the early issues of Success magazine. And Earl told the story about a man who was walking along the beach early one morning, and he saw at the end of a pier a man who was fishing, elderly guy, and he seemed to be really hauling him in. And so he stood at the end of the pier without the guy noticing him for a while and watched him bringing him in. He noticed that he seemed to be, when he'd get a fish in, he'd measure it, and then he would throw some of them back. And it looked like he was throwing the biggest ones back in and keeping small ones. And so finally, he got brave enough to go walk down the end of the pier, go up to the gentleman and said, you know, excuse me, sir, but I'm kind of puzzled. You're throwing what appears to be big ones away after measuring them, apparently, and then keeping the small ones. And what are you doing? And he said, well, the gentleman said, my frying pan is only 9 inches across. And so Earl Nightingale and others, since having come across that story, know that people have big ideas, divine ideas that come, and we throw them back because our frying pan isn't big enough. We're not able to hold within our consciousness the magnitude of what is possible, what it is that God may want to be doing through us in a particular time. We're afraid we might fail. We're afraid of what people might think if we don't do it right. All the different things that come up humanly that keep us from landing a big one and going forward with it in our life. Someone has said, and it's a motivational speaker, somebody told me they thought they knew who it was, but anyway, that a person's problem is that they have stinkin' thinking, okay? And there is an interesting passage biblically that is in Psalm 77 that it starts out in one particular energy where a person's troubled and just really down and down on God, and is God there, and then it shifts. And just let me share with you how this starts out. Same chapter. So this is from Psalms, and the psalmist writes, I cried out to God with my voice. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and still was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his tender mercies? Sounds like the person's in a bad place, doesn't it? All right? A little further on, all of a sudden shifts, changes to something constructive and very powerful, a higher level. Goes like this, quote, and I said, this is my anguish, but I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High, meaning God. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old, speaking to God. I also will meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. Same chapter, same psalm writer, just a shift. Which do you want to be? Which do you think works? All right? Awesome. There's a shift in the energy to where one is expecting the impossible, feeling the intangible, seeing into the invisible. And so, you know, we're heading into Lent this week. And you know what Lent stands for? L-E-N-T? Let's eliminate negative thinking. So let's do that. Doesn't matter where we are in this life, what our age is, we're often drawn to or given a challenge that takes us and is intended to take us beyond our current limitations. There is a part of us that wants to stretch. There's a part of us that wants to be free and overcome and push on. I love the story that Rachel Naomi Remen in her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, tells about her mother. It was her mother's 80th birthday that was coming up. And so she asked her what she wanted to do. It was two days away. And her mother said, I want to walk or climb to the top of the Statue of Liberty. She's 80 years old, and she has a severe heart condition. And she said, her daughter says, Rachel says, well, they have an elevator. And her mother looks at her and says, I want to climb the stairs. And so she had lived in New York City, had come over as a 5-year-old from Russia, sailed into the harbor, but had never been into the Statue of Liberty. And so now, at this age, at 80, Rachel was saying she wants to walk 342 steps up and climb the stairs with a heart condition. So she said that's what she wants for her birthday. We'll take the nitroglycerin along. We'll allow it to be an all-day thing. And it became a 6-hour ascent. And she had misgivings along the way. How did I get talked into this? And they would take a few steps and then rest. And Rachel said that half of New York passed them on the stairs. And finally, they were unbelievably, she said, 6 or 7 steps away from the top there. And she basically, the mother eyed the end of the road there before getting there, just a few steps, and she eyed her goal with resentment, Rachel said. And her mother said, why couldn't we have done these first? And so in her book, Rachel says that thinking back to that experience with her mother, she herself remembered all the times that she had resented the climb. You know, the amount of energy and the amount of living needed to gain a particular understanding in something they had to go through, something that they had to learn that was a part of life, to know how to live life better or to live it well. And she reflected on how important it is that in the struggle for freedom from the old ways, not to be limited by self-expectations or to worry about what other people think. You know, to just be willing to do the really important things that come up for you to do in life any way that you can, even if it's 3 steps at a time. And sometimes there's strain and struggle in a challenge, and we ask ourselves, why couldn't I have avoided all of that, you know, and just got there in a few steps, you know, getting where I wanted to get, learning what I needed to learn. But it never helps to resent where we've been, you know. If we're on the front end of some kind of challenge and something is there for you now, it's just for you to continue to break ground, to look for new horizons spiritually, to persevere. That's built into you. We have to trust, we have to take a few steps, we have to move towards our liberty. Whatever the climb, the liberty is there. And so we have to know that there exists in all of us a mystical power that surrounds and unfolds us and lives within us. 3 things. Have a vision of what you want, call on God and be guided, and then take the leap of faith. Affirm after me, I am looking for a miracle. I expect the impossible. I feel the intangible. I see into God's invisible. I am expanding my horizons. Go be a light in the world. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.